Okay, Shalom, Shalom, Kwam Yasha'Allah, Kohaloyim La Yahweh, Bahashim Yahushai, Bahashim, Chachachodash, double honors to our apostles and elders of Great Millstone who rule well, and that by the Spirit taught us his beautiful truth, and just want to say the water to all the H.I.M and Akwaf. That's out here sincerely keeping the laws, the statutes, and commandments of Yahweh, Bahashim Yahushai to the best of their ability. This is Yachanan the Waf just coming at you with another quick lesson, praying that it's edifying by the Spirit. A little back to the basics for new believers just coming into this truth for the very first time. And it says, people tell me I'm black on the inside and white on the outside. Larry Bird on why he never cared about the white man can't jump stereotype. Okay, so now when you come into these scriptures and when you come into this truth, you have to get rid of that white and black narrative, because Israelites are going to look like all people because we've been scattered throughout the four corners of the earth. So Larry Bird could very well be an Israelite. You know, there are Israelites that look like Chinese people, Israelites that look like Japanese people, so on and so forth, because the seed goes through the Father. So that's what I want to start with. And I also pulled up, the social construct in Chat GPT, because that's exactly what it is. White and black, those are social constructs. No one is actually white and no one is actually black. Like you can see the back of the screen right here. Nobody looks like that. You know what I'm saying? And nobody looks like what I would say a car tire, so to speak. You got some real deep, dark chocolate brown people, you know what I'm saying, so to speak, with a darker hue that make them, maybe like even with some of those Hamites, they kind of look a bluish type of tint, blackish type of tint, but they're still not actually, black like that, but it really overall it's a social construct. And there's no such thing as white people. There are different shades of red people on the planet. So let's go into Numbers chapter 1. And let's get the proper way of lineage, or family tree, in a sense of, what the scripture says. We go by what the Lord says. We don't go by what Esau, Edom, the so-called white man, has come up with, because he's telling people they're biracial, they're multiracial. You got these DNA test swabs and shit where they do 23andMe type deals, and they're telling you that you're 1% this, you're 10% that, you're 30% this, and you're just a smorgasbord of all these people, and that's just not the way that it goes. But let me just start at now this is a census of Israel's warriors, but it gives you the way that lineage actually goes. Numbers chapter 1:1, let's start there. It says, and Yahweh, which is the true name of the Father, which means that he exists, or the existing one. And of course, the true name of the Son, which the world ignorantly calls Jesus, which, you get that picture of a so-called white man. We say so-called because they're actually pinkish to reddish in color, which they're Edomites. Esau came out red, according to Genesis chapter 25. So they're not actually white. They're actually pinkish to reddish in color, but they've given us this so-called white image, blonde hair, blue-eyed image of who they call Jesus, but his name is Yahushai, which means that he's the savior or deliverer in the Paleo-Hebrew. So let's go back to the top here, Numbers 1:1. And Yahweh spake unto Moses in the wilderness of Sinai, in the tabernacle of the congregation, on the first day of the second month, in the second year, after they were come out of the land of Egypt, saying, take ye the sum of all the congregation of the children of Israel after their families by the house of their fathers. See that? With the number of their names, every male by their poles. Because women have absolutely nothing to do with ethnicity. That's why it says the house of your fathers. Every male by their poles. It doesn't say by the house of your mothers, every female by their poles. That's why you have Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. You don't have Abigail, Isabella, and Jessica. You know what I'm saying? Women are mentioned in the scriptures, but when it comes to genealogy, that's why when you go to Matthew chapter 1, you'll see the genealogy of the Lord, which the world ignorantly calls Jesus, Yahushai, and you'll see the whole list of all his great grandfathers, so to speak, right? So now when you go on down, it's going to give you the list of the men that's named off. You got the 12 tribes of Israel right here. You got Simeon, and then Judah, Issachar, Zebulun. But let me jump down to verse 18 to further put this together here. It says, and they assembled all the congregation together on the first day of the second month, and they declared their pedigrees after their families by the house of their fathers. See, according to the number of the names from 20 years old and upward, by their polls. So let's get this word declare. Let me see here. Oh, they just had pedigree. So they have it as I think as a phrase. Yalad, to bear. Young, causatively to begot. And that's pretty much what it's going off into, begot. Because the male, he carries the seed, within him. The seed is within his, the sperm is the seed. Those are children already, if you want to think of it that way. So they are exactly what he is. But so when this guy, Larry Bird, says that, I'm black on the inside, because Judah or Israelites have a certain spirit. We have, we're the salt of the earth. We have a totally different spirit from other races of people. That's why you'll see somebody, you'll be like, dang, they look, they act just like a so-called black person, or, they have swag, like, or they can dance, or they can sing, or they could, whatever the talent may be. They do it like, with such flavor where it's like, nah, that can't be, who you think it is, so to speak. So he could be an Israelite. Not saying that he is, but, I was just using this as an example as to, the skin color thing. You got to get out of the skin color thing. Though the Bible does mention skin colors, but in this day and time, you have to realize that the children of Israel have been scattered throughout the four corners of the earth, man. The seed has been mingled, so to speak, but the seed goes through your father, and whatever your father is, that's exactly what you are. So there are people that look like so-called white people that are actually so-called black people. That's where you get the parable of the wheat and the tares as well. Okay, but we don't have to go all off into the story, because Larry Bird was nice back in the days. He put up numbers, you know what I'm saying? He was definitely an icon. He was along the time of Magic Johnson. If you want to see any footage of him, I would say just go into YouTube. He was nice, though. Larry Bird wasn't bad at all, man. I liked him back in the days, you know what I'm saying? But, yeah, just go and check out some videos on him if you want to see him get down. But I wanted to go off into this social construct. So I asked ChatGPT, explain black and white people's social constructs. It says the social constructs of black and white people are deeply rooted in historical, political, and economic systems, especially those tied to colonialism, slavery, and racial capitalism. These constructs are not biological or scientific realities. See that? So it's not a biological thing. No one can biologically be white or black. Those are social constructs, Skin colors are not ethnicities. The Lord, he created 18 nations, and Israelites are one of those nations, and the Edomites are one of those nations. And the Edomites are the so-called whites today, and the Israelites are the so-called blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans today. It says these constructs are not biological or scientific realities, but rather categories that societies have created and assigned meaning to over time. Here's a breakdown of what that means. What is a social construct? Number one, a social construct is an idea or concept that has been created and accepted by people in society. Race is one of the most powerful examples. There is no genetic or scientific basis for dividing people into black or white. Instead, these categories have been made meaningful by social, legal, and institutional systems. Number two, origins of black and white as racial categories. Colonialism and slavery in the 15th to 18th centuries, European powers, which is the Edomites, began colonizing Africa, the Americas, and part of Asia. During this time, skin color was used to justify enslavement and colonization. People with lighter skin, European descent, were categorized as white and seen as superior, while people with darker skin, particularly of African descent, were labeled as black and viewed as inferior or subhuman. Now, mind you, these are the very people with no melanin that's getting all the damn sun cancer, telling you that they're superior. You're not even more superior than the damn Hamites, which are the so-called Africans. Okay, but it says whiteness as power. Whiteness became associated with its access to rights, citizenship, full humanity. It was socially constructed as a norm or default. And over time, laws like Jim Crow, redlining, apartheid, etc. reinforced this. Blackness as the other, blackness was constructed in contrast to whiteness and associated with enslavement, exclusion, criminality, and labor exploitation. These narratives were embedded in education, media, and politics. That's the reason why people are so into this today. Esau has done a real good job at weaponizing that black and white word, because he was gifted with the sword. See, he can turn anything into a weapon. It says how these constructs function today. Social hierarchies. Even after the end of legal slavery and segregation, many societies still operate under racial hierarchies that place whiteness at the top and blackness at the bottom. This affects education, employment, housing, healthcare, policing, and more. Next on the list, cultural identity. For many, these categories are not just imposed, they're also reclaimed. Black and white can be cultural identities with pride, resistance, and heritage. For example, the concept of blackness in the U.S. includes shared culture, musical, historical, and political experience shaped by resilience and community. But see, that's what they want to stick that black on you. Like, these are the only things that you can do. You know, like, you can't run a government. You couldn't possibly have your own military. You couldn't possibly have your own monetary system, or, you know, your own hospitals, or your own, you know, anything that has to do with a governing country. You know what I'm saying? They can't see you doing nothing like that. They can only see you as overall entertainment within their society, so to speak. It says systematic racism. Racial constructs continue to shape institutions. For example, police disproportionately surveil and harm black communities. Schools and neighborhoods are often segregated by race due to historical policies. Economic equalities often fall along racial lines. So, hey, this is Chat GPT, and this is you so-called white people's program. So your own program is telling on you. Why understanding social construct matters. Recognizing race as a social construct doesn't mean race isn't real in the effects. On the contrary, it shapes lives. Helps us understand racism as a product of human systems, not nature. Gives us tools to challenge and change inequitable systems. And you think that white people would teach this in their schools? You think that they'll actually tell the children that they're that white and black are social constructs? No, they're not. They would never tell them that. Why? Because they would lose their power, so to speak. Oh, you're not really white. Oh, and I'm not really black. You know, they're not going to tell these kids that, okay, we're all humans. And actually, in reality, since they say that America is a so-called Christian country, they're not going to tell you so-called blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans that you are Israelites and that you're above them. You know, because the scripture says that we're above them. You know, let me get Deuteronomy 7:6 real quick. For thou art an holy people unto the Lord thy God. The Lord Yahweh thy God hath chosen thee to be a special people unto himself above all people that are upon the face of the earth. So the Israelites are above all the other races of people on the earth, man. The Lord, he chose a portion out of all the nations that he created. He created 18 nations. He chose one for himself, one that he favored it himself, and that was the Israelites, man. As a matter of fact, let's go into 2nd Ezra 6:54. Been a while since we've been here. 2nd Ezra 6:54 in the Apocrypha, 1611 King James Bible. And after these, Adam also, whom thou madest Lord of all thy creatures, of him come we all, and the people also whom thou hast chosen. See? So the Lord, he created all people, but he chose a people out of all the people that he created. All this have I spoken before thee, O Lord, because thou madest the world for our sakes. So the world was made for the sake of the Israelites. As for the other people, which also come of Adam, thou hast said that they are nothing, but be like unto spittle, and has likened the abundance of them unto a drop that falleth from a vessel. So the Lord is saying, hey, these people are nothing, man, compared to the Israelites that he chose. And now, O Lord, behold, these heathen, which have ever been reputed as nothing, have begun to be lords over us and to devour us. So these so-called white people, with one of the weapons that they used was the social construct of them being white and us being black, and they're ruling over us and they're devouring us with that. And it's not just them, it's these other nations as well. But the top enemy, according to Psalms 83, and Psalms 83, it gives off a list of the nations when it comes to the biblical names. And Esau, Edom, the so-called white race, is at the top of that list. Verse 58, it says, but we, thy people, whom thou hast called thy firstborn, thy only begotten, and thy fervent lover, are given into their hands. If the world now be made for our sakes, why do we not possess an inheritance with the world? How long shall this endure? See? So it's coming to a point where the Lord, you know, matter of fact, if you go on up here to the top, verse 9, it's a pretty long chapter. Verse 9, it says, for Esau is the end of the world, and Jacob is the beginning of it that followeth. So instead of saying white, they should say Esau. Instead of saying black, they should say Jacob. But this man is at the end of his kingdom right now. And that's the reason why you're starting to see a lot of Esau being exposed, basically. Matter of fact, let's get 2 Thessalonians. He's being exposed as being a damn fraud, man. Everybody is starting to see like, no, well, you're not who you've been saying that you are, and especially those ones over there in the Holy Land calling themselves Israelis, Jews and shit. You know, people really starting to see like, nope, you're not the people. 2 Thessalonians 2:3, let no man deceive you by any means, for that day shall not come except there come a falling away first, and that man of sin be revealed, the son of perdition. So before the Lord can come, a prophecy must play out that this man of sin, the son of perdition, be revealed, and this Esau Edom, the so-called white man. Verse 4 says, who opposeth and exalteth himself above all that is called God, or that is worshipped, so that he is God, sitteth in the temple of God, showing himself that he is God. Because with that social construct came this. Let's get this real quick. With that social construct, when you put in, let me see here, it's a lot. I was looking up these so-called white women going back into the 1930s in my last video, and put in when the first bathing suit was introduced, and that's when shit got nasty for all the women in the world overall. But let's put in this guy Jesus, right? Who exalteth himself above all that is called God. See, this is what you get when you put in Jesus. But they know full well that there's no letter J in Hebrew, no letter E, no letter O, no letter U, no letter V. And the Lord's name is not Jesus. The letter J was invented in 1524 by a grammarian named Giorgio Trissino. So they know his name is not Jesus, and they know full well he don't look like this. They know that the Revelation chapter 1 describes the Lord as being a dark melanated man. I asked Chat GPT about that, and it actually said that the Lord was a man of color. So they know. But see, now these things are starting to be revealed. That's how you know that we're closer to the coming of the Lord. Because these lies right here used to fly like it was nothing. It was nothing for people. It's still a lot of people that still believe in these images. But a lot of people are starting to come to the realization like, oh, this shit is a goddamn lie. These people have been lying. So now when you put in God, again, remember it says, let's just put in God. And all you're going to see, you see white images popping up. But the scriptures describes the Lord as being dark, a melanated man, you know? Like this shit right here, like who the fuck, you know, the scriptures don't describe the Lord being a butt-naked white man in every damn picture that you see. You got these little white butt-naked babies. Why do they do that? These are the type of images that you be getting right here when it comes to God and you know, and his son, Yahweh Shai, which we know that this is all idolatry. Like, look at this shit. This shit's got nothing to do with the Lord. This is like your Renaissance type of art, man. These so-called white people whitewashing every damn thing. A bunch of damn little white kids floating around and shit. Look at this. The Lord didn't look like this, man. But these are the pictures that our people resonate with when they think of the Lord. And that's all because of scriptures like what we just brought out. Let's go back into it. Verse 4, 2 Thessalonians 2:4, who opposeth and exalteth himself above all that is called God, or that is worshipped, so that he is God, sitteth in the temple of God, showing himself that he is God. Right? And then another one, Job 9:24, because this is his kingdom. Job 9:24, the earth is given into the hand of the wicked. He covered the faces of the judges thereof. If not, where, who is he? Who's the main judge? The Father, which they just showed you as being a butt-naked white guy. Then the Son, you know, just looking like, you know, looking like a bearded woman. Effeminate as hell. Long ass hair hanging on his back. The scriptures don't describe the Lord as looking like that, man. As a matter of fact, that goes against the scriptures. It says that it's a shame for a man to have long hair. Right? So now when you go into the parable of the wheat and tares, let me see. The Lord is going to separate the wheat and the tares because there are actual so-called white people out here that look like so-called black people. And we like to always give an example. I was trying to explain to the beloved brother Allah, the Maury twins, which, matter of fact, let me bring them up real quick. because I never did get into a lesson. I wanted to do a lesson on them, because she was talking about, they one of them be talking about using their so-called black side. You know what I'm saying? Because their mother is so-called black, but their father is a so-called white man. So that makes them Edomites. That's exactly what they are. You know what I'm saying? So let me just put in, I'm going to put in Tia. See? Now this appears to be, remember they used to play the little kid show back in the day. It's called Sister Sister. Now she appears to be a so-called black woman. She just ended up getting, like a little bit of her mom's skin color and, somewhat of that hair texture. But she turned out more looking like a so-called black woman than anything, Now, if you look at her parents, let me put in her parents. Okay, so this is the mom right here with the little brother as well. These are all Edomites. The two sisters. But look at how dark their mom is, right? So now when you go off into, well, damn, they don't look like they show the dad no more. Somebody must have caught on. Hell to the nah. They done look like they done tried to. See, and this shit that Esau be doing too. Esau be trying to get rid of photos that actually show them as to who, like their dad, because Esau understands that this truth is coming out, and the color shit that they've been running don't matter no more. I'm assuming, let me see. I think this the dad right here. Yep, this the dad right here. So now he could actually be an Israelite, but from what, his, the profile says is that he's a so-called white man. So here they all go together. That's him, which he could be an Israelite, you know what I'm saying? But from what he's saying, or from what they say, he's a so-called white man. But you can clearly see like how dark their mom is, because their mom is chocolate as shit. And so they get their color, they got that blend, they lean in a little bit more towards, they just look like some like so-called light-skinned white chicks, right? And then, you got people like, what's this guy right here? The Smolletts, Jussie Smollett and Journey and them. Let me see. Those are Edomites too. As far as the profile, as far as what the dad is saying he is, so to speak, So this guy right here, see, here's the brother and sister. They're like the most famous of all the brothers and sisters. These two right here, right? But these are Edomites. But they're considered to be so-called black people, because look, he has the hair texture. They just look like so-called light-skinned Jake, which a lot of our people look like this. You know what I'm saying? But these are actual Edomites. These would be so-called white people right here, right? So now when you get somebody like, I was just watching, what's her name? Quincy Jones' daughter. I was watching a movie with her in there last night. Damn, I can't think of her name right off. But it's plenty of, let me see. Let me just put in Quincy Jones' daughter. Or Tracy Ellis Ross as well. She's a so-called white woman. Now she got a black woman type of shape. She kind of got that look of Diana Ross, you know what I'm saying? Just lighter skin. But she's actually she would be considered to be a so-called white woman. Or her name is Rashida. That's what her name is. And so here's the two daughters, but this one right here, she's a little bit more known for, a lot of the parts that she play on TV. But she can pass for a so-called white woman if she really wanted to, even though you can kind of see through it, And here's the other one. She appears to look a little bit more like she may be of Northern Kingdom, which Quincy Jones, he could be from Northern Kingdom. But this is them right here. This is a so-called black man. This is his daughter, and she plays a lot of those parts. She actually said that she couldn't get she wanted to play black women parts, but no one would give her a chance at it. You know what I'm saying? Because she basically looked like she was too much of a white woman, so to speak, right? So it's plenty of these people, man. Then you go into like somebody like Patrick. Let me just get one more, just to make the point from a so-called black person side that looks like a so-called white woman or a white man. So when you put in, I like to use Patrick Mahomes because he's married to a so-called white woman. You just put in his kids. Because when you look at Patrick Mahomes, his dad is a so-called black man. He's a darker skinned man, but he married a so-called white woman. And then you get Patrick Mahomes, of course, his look right here. So he's a lighter skinned so-called black man. And this is his daughter, which this would be a so-called little black girl. If it let me see, I want to see if it's gonna clear up some. A little blurry. And a little boy as well, you know what I'm saying? Because they just had another son. But these are his children. This is his family right here. So this is his wife. Those little kids came from, and they just had a third baby. So if the little boy was to grow up and marry a so-called white woman and he had children with her, they're just going to look like white people. But they're still going to be Israelites because the seed goes through the father, right? So let me take it a step back. Let's put in his parents, right? So you can see, and then I'll just move on from there, Yahweh. But we got, like to set this up for, newcomers that's coming into this truth that may not know this particular information. So here's his parents. This is his dad. Look how dark his dad is. This is his mom. He came out looking like that color. He married a white woman, and from that, you got what you seeing now. You know what I'm saying? So within one generation, the color is gone. So just imagine 2 generations, 3 generations. We done been in America, man, only fucking about 14, 15 generations. So imagine what Israelites look like now if it only takes 1 generation to really rid the color of the person. Because it's not a color thing. It is an actual, a lot of people that you really think that are so-called white people, they're Israelites. So you can't be digging into that color thing so hard, man. But let me go, we get the wheat and the tares. In Matthew chapter 13, right? So now also let me pull up wheat and tares on Google. So you can see that wheat and tares look exactly alike almost until the harvest comes, until you harvest it. Let me just put in wheat and tares. And I remember this when I lived in the South. See, when you got wheat and tares, they look alike. See, like this is a perfect example right here. They got the same look. But once it gets all the way tall, it gets to the ripening point or the harvesting point. That's when you can tell the difference. But as it's growing, they look exactly alike. So let's go into this parable that Yahushua was speaking of. So it says the parable of the weeds, right? Matthew 13:24. Another parable put he forth unto them, saying, the kingdom of heaven is likened unto a man which sowed good seed in his field. But while men slept, his enemy came and sowed tares among the wheat and went his way. So this is basically like, during slavery, so to speak, when the so-called white man was coming out into the shed at night. He was, raping up, raping Big Mama. And he would leave his seed in her. He would get her pregnant. Some of those seed was coming out looking light skinned. Some of those seed was coming out looking dark skinned. The lighter skinned ones would normally be the house Negroes. They would be in the house doing work, serving the food and doing shit like that. But this so-called white man, he was putting his own kids to work. If you turned out more chocolate or darker, your ass is going directly into the fields. And he would actually work his own children to death. You see? So verse 26, it says, but when the blade was sprung up and brought forth fruit, then appeared the tares also. So now, mind you, this is a parable. So the servants of the householder came and said unto him, Sir, didst not thou sow good seed in thy field? From whence then hath it tares? So where these tares come from? Because all the seed was supposedly good. He said unto them, an enemy have done this. The servant said unto him, wilt thou then that we go and gather them up? But he said, nay, which is no, lest while you gather up the tares, ye root up also the wheat with them. Let both grow together until the harvest. And in the time of harvest, I will say to the reapers, gather ye together first the tares, and bind them in bundles to burn them, but gather the wheat into my barn. And that right there can go back into what's that, Obadiah chapter 1:18, I think that is. Let me see. Because Esau is going to be eventually, his ass is going to be out of here. Obadiah 1:18, it says, and the house of Jacob shall be a fire, and the house of Joseph a flame. So this right here is talking about the actual wheat. and the house of Esau for stubble, which is the weed. He's the tear. In the house of Esau for stubble, and they shall kindle in them and devour them, and there shall not be any remaining of the house of Esau, for the Lord has spoken it. See? So Esau, Edom, the so-called white man, his ass is out of here anyway. But especially those tares, because the Lord is going to separate. Matter of fact, let's go back to it. Let's go back into it real quick, because he's going to explain that parable. Let's go down. Let's see. The parable of the weeds explained. Because the disciples wanted to know, because that was like a dark saying to them. Matthew 13 and 36. And all praises to Yahweh Bashim Yahushua for our elders, man. Our the beloved apostles, our teachers, that the Lord really dealt with them in the spirit to break this stuff down to us, and deals with us in the spirit to actually understand it, because everybody won't get this, because it's a dark saying. Matthew 13 and 36. Then Yahushua sent the multitude away and went into the house. And his disciples came unto him, saying, declare unto us the parable of the tares of the field. Right? And he answered, because they wanted to know about the tares, because they was like, okay, something not right here. Who are these, because this was something that was set in place by the enemy. It says, he answered and said unto them, he that soweth the good seed is the Son of Man. The field is the world. The good seed are the children of the kingdom, which we know are the Israelites. But the tares are the children of the wicked one. See? Of these so-called white people that you see running around here. But they are people that look like us. They dark-skinned and shit too. Some of them are very dark-skinned. Some of them look like Chinese. It's so-called white people that look like Chinese people. Japanese people. Because they blended that man's seed. Esau, the so-called white man, he been blending his seed in the world too. You have to realize that. It says the field is the world. Matthew 13 and 38 again, Salakia. The field is the world. The good seed are the children of the kingdom, but the tares are the children of the wicked one. The enemy that sowed them is the devil, which is deceiver. The harvest is the end of the world, and the reapers are the angels. See? And therefore the tares are gathered and burned in the fire. So shall it be in the end of the world. Can't get around it, man. The Son of Man shall send forth his angels, and they shall gather out of his kingdom all things that offend, and them which do iniquity, and shall cast them into the furnace of fire. There shall be wailing and gnashing of teeth. But that parable is going off into two sets of people: wheats and tares, Israelites and Edomites. And we all got somebody in the family that could appear to be, it goes so many ways, man. You be surprised. You be seriously surprised. You'll think that somebody is an actual so-called white person, and they're actually a so-called black person, or they can be a so-called Native American Indian. Vice versa. So don't get it twisted when it comes to this skin color thing. And I just seen this little Larry Bird hook up, and I was like, well, hey, this is there's some newcomers that's coming into this truth that need to know this, so we just do lessons on it, a little back to the basics, man. Because we be praying for I pray every day for laborers, new laborers for the harvest, that the Lord will raise up more laborers for the harvest. So those laborers, these are the things that the laborers will have to know if they're going out on the highways and byways. They can't just have somebody just bowing down and kissing their boot because they got blonde hair, blue eyes, and look like a so-called white man. They may not necessarily be that. You might have an actual Israelite bowing to your ass, So you have to be careful of stuff like that, man, So I'm going to end out there. I do pray that the lesson was edifying with that. Kwame Yasha Allah and the Bible Ball.